friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny, and today I thought I would take you on a journey of me reading through one-star reviews of my favorite books of 2024. We'll see how this goes. I have never done a reaction video where I read off one-star reviews of my favorite books. I've done some reaction videos where I look at like 1-star, 3-star, and 5-star reviews of certain books, and I've looked at like funny reviews, but I don't think I've ever done one where I'm looking at my favorites with no preparation whatsoever. I have not looked at Goodreads yet. I haven't found the 1-star reviews that I'm putting up on the screen, so you guys are just going to be on a journey with me today. And my goal is to do my top 4 books of 2024. We'll see how long this takes and whether or not that all 4 books end up getting done. And I think I'd like to do 2 or 3 reviews from each, just to see what people are saying about my favorites. So if you did not watch my best books of 2024 and you would like to, I will link that in the cards and down in the description below. But my top 4, since we'll be discussing them here, my top 1 was Wind and Truth. We'll save that one until last because I know that one's going to be painful to read. My second favorite book is The Book of Doors. My third was The Grief of Stones. And that one, I'm not sure how many 1-star reviews we're going to get because it's a sequel. I know that Wind and Truth will get some because I've heard just rumblings of people who really didn't enjoy it. And then my 4th book was Fragile Threads of Power, which is also like a quote-unquote sequel, but it's really a companion series, and I would imagine that there are some people who didn't like where that series went, although I loved it. So you're on the roller coaster ride with me. We'll see how this goes. I am going to move over and I will try and display the review over on the side so you guys can read along with me. Please do not go after the people in these reviews. I'm not even going to put their names up on the screen. Everyone has the right to their own opinion, and so I hold no ill will towards anyone who does not like my favorites. I totally get it. I understand. And yeah, this is just supposed to be fun. So let's all just have fun together. Okay, so I'm going to look up our first book. So we're going to start with my number 4 book for 2024, and that was Fragile Threads of Power. And I'm going to look up 1-star reviews. Ooh, I am going to try and avoid spoilers. So there are some that as I'm reading, I might end up skipping them. Okay, so the first one, a DNF. I legit can't read this anymore, and I'm so sad. I was certain that this was going to be a 5-star book for me. I made it to page 450. Oh my goodness. And I'm going to rip my face off from boredom. This is one huge info dump of a book. Nothing is happening. It's all tell. No, wait, let me flash back again to a random date and give you some more backstory. Nope, not done yet. Let's flash back again and give you some more mundane backstory. I just don't care about any of these people, and I'm not paying attention to it anymore. There's nothing that can happen in the next 200 pages that will redeem the dregs that this book has dragged me to. I've never read a more less story in my life. Oh no. Tell us how you really feel. I disagree, but like I said, you are entitled to your opinion. They're saying that the story is more tell than show, and I don't think I could disagree more. There's so much of like the magic, like specifically the threads of magic that you get to learn about and how her power works. I disagree, my friend, but you can have your own opinion. Okay, let's see what's next. I've been trying to find one that's not a DNF. Okay, so this one says, I'm finally done. I'm finally free. I started reading at the end of February, but it feels like I've been stuck slogging in it forever. I haven't put it down in favor of reading other novels first, so I can't use that as an excuse, though I've gotten through a few volumes of manga titles since. It's a problem for me that I dislike or hate most of the protagonists, especially Lila Bard. I know that I've heard that Lila is kind of a controversial character for some people, and so if you don't like Lila, yeah, you're not gonna enjoy the story, I wouldn't think. They make so many bad or petty decisions, especially Lila. I'm not rooting for them. And I'm gonna skip some spoilers. Schwab's book tend to do a lot of flashback chapters instead of just writing the plot straightforwardly, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it seems to be fashionable in fiction these days. and then it talks about a specific reveal that they didn't enjoy. With this particular book, I would say that if you are not a fan of flashbacks, that you're probably not going to enjoy the progression of the story. I really like it both ways. I enjoy when authors can place in breadcrumbs throughout the story to give you a backstory without doing full flashbacks, but I also enjoy going back in time and living moments with characters. It doesn't bother me as long as it's not... I like it when it's interwoven throughout the story. There are some books that will do like an entire story in the first 50% of the book, and then they will do a time jump, and then they will do another set of stories, or, you know, the story in the second 50% of the book, and I really don't like that. That happened in Scholar of the Last Fairy Door, and I understand why the author did it, but I do think that I would have preferred them be intermingled throughout, so I can get both stories at once. Okay, last one says, I really wanted to like this book because I love V. Schwab's writing. I love the Darker Shades of Magic series, but this one just didn't do it for me. The returning characters feel boring, like they've all lost their personality. The new characters are interesting, but we spend far too little time with them. I'm 60% into the book and not much has happened, so this must be another DNF. There's been a little bit of setup into who the main villain will be and a side villain recycled from the previous story, but they haven't done anything. 60% in, and there's still just whispers on the wind. This has taken way too long to get to the actual story and has lost my interest. I do think the main character, like the new character of this story, is my favorite. And even from like the past book. Like I love Lila Bard from the last book. I love Kel, Rye. Those are all characters that I really enjoyed. But the character that you get introduction to in Fragile Threads of Power, I think, is my favorite. And I didn't mind, though, them being... I would say that they were more of a main part, but you definitely get less of them in the beginning of the story, and you get more and more as the story moves forward, which I'm hoping that continues, like with the rest of the series, that they become a bigger and bigger and bigger part of the storyline, which I can see happening. But I disagree that the old characters were boring, but it is very slow. It's like 650 page book. So there's a lot of pages, a lot of details to be had. I was sucked up every minute of the story. I had no boring feelings as I was reading. I was just completely immersed in the world. But I do understand, and I don't know if this particular person is a person who enjoys chunky reads or not. But I like those almost mundane moments where you get to know the characters. So that might be telling. If you are someone who likes like a super high-paced, fast-paced story, this might not be one for you. Okay, let's move on to The Grief of Stones. And this one, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to share much because it is the second book in a series, and it's not it is a companion series to The Goblin Emperor, but we'll see. We'll see if we can find some good 1-stars. Ooh, there's only 13. There's only 13 total. That's crazy. Okay, let's see. Okay, this first one. I was a huge fan of The Goblin Emperor, but not as keen on The Witness for the Dead, the first book in the spin-off series Cemeteries of Alamo. If you didn't like Witness for the Dead, you probably just shouldn't move on because it doesn't change. Like the cadence of the story, the characters, like you're continuing on the same track of thinking as the first book. The series is about a detective / priest / medium of sorts, Thara Kalahar. Hope springs eternal, though, so I requested 2 in that series, The Grief of Stones. Set in Alamo, the same steampunkish industrial city where its prequel takes place, The Witness for the Dead, The Grief of Stones opens... I'm not going to read that part because it's a little bit of a spoiler for The Witness for the Dead. So they go on to explain the narration in the book, and this says... All this seemed like something that could amount to a good book, but my hopes didn't pan out. Thara is sympathetic, but also self-contained. There is a subdued tone to his first-person narration that likely stems from his trauma. His response was to shut down. Unfortunately, it made his story seem muted and dry. Oh, my friend. Oh, my friend. I disagree with every part of my heart. Speaking generally, in the 100+ pages I read, the character lacked nuance. The writing is so detailed that it gives them a lifelike quality, and there's a sense that the author took care with them. But most of the new characters are people Thara either extends his kindness to or whom his gut instinct warns him that he won't like, and they inevitably live up or down to these expectations. There's very little about them to surprise the reader. I guess that's not what I went into it for, though. I didn't go in for surprises. I went in to see how Thara interacts with his community around him. That's, I think, the shining star of The Grief of Stones and The Witness for the Dead, is you get to see him be this person who helps people deal with their grief, all the while having to deal with his own trauma, which that is why I read the story, not for the suspense or the thrill of solving the mystery. And yeah, that's an added bonus when you have things that surprise you or take you by storm, but that wasn't what I found beautiful about the story. So I do understand, though, if you're looking for something that is surprising and kind of fast-paced, or something that keeps you turning pages, that doesn't have like a cozy vibe to it, this series, yeah, it definitely isn't for you. Okay, next one. Picked up this book because the description sounded so interesting. Unfortunately, I was left feeling extremely unsatisfied. The book was marked as sci-fi fantasy in my local library. However, it did feel more like a drab small town story where the characters happened to be goblins and elves. The characters' names are insufferable and unnecessarily long and complex. Same for the old-timey and proper language the author uses. It feels forced, like a teenager using British slang in her first Wattpad story. Oh my goodness, this person's bringing the fire. I do think the character names are absolutely ludicrous, and I would have had a hard time had I been reading this just fully physically. I did read it immersively, and I just loved it. So I think that the names add to the culture, honestly. Like, that's, you know, this is just my opinion. I like it when authors can make a world feel like there is meaning behind things. I can see the culture behind and the kind of cohesiveness of the community because their names are similar, and they have like similar vibes. Kind of like you can tell if you meet someone that if their name is maybe a family name or something that is more cultural for them. I think that is what the naming progression of the story did for me, was just show me some of the intricacies of the people that we were surrounded by. But I understand that it could be a nuisance to someone who wasn't as intrigued with that as I was. As far as the old-timey and proper language, I would say that was something that I really enjoyed, because I do think it adds to almost the cozy nature and the personality of Thara Kelleher. The fact that he is very proper, I guess is the word to say. I like that about it, but I understand that it could probably seem maybe stuffy. This says, I tried so badly to give this book a chance, but I had to DNF. Have several more painstaking chapters. Needless to say, I'm happy I got this one from the library and didn't waste my money. Oh, I'm happy that you didn't waste your money as well, friend. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next book. So we're going to move on to the Book of Doors. This one I'm a little worried about because I really don't think that a lot of people are going to jive with the ending or like one of the big reveals in the book. Once again, I will keep spoilers from you guys. Here's the first review. This is pretty long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll just kind of skim and maybe do some highlights. Here's the thing. I'm not really a hater. When I don't like a book, I'll generally rate it low, write a one-sentence review, and move on. But with the Book of Doors, I have a lot to say. First, the things I liked about this book. 1, the cover is stunning. 2, the premise sounds incredible. Magical books, time travel, a main character who works in a bookstore, a big mysterious library. Great. And then they go on to describe kind of what the book is about. Reading the plot summary, I was incredibly excited to start this as I was expecting a cozy fantasy filled with enchantment, wonder, and action, but I've been left feeling very disappointed. The pacing of the story was all over the place. The first half of the story felt really slow, but at the same time shoving a lot of information at us, expecting us to remember until the end of the book. It was a lot of telling and hardly any showing, and I kept waiting for something captivating to happen, and it just didn't. The characters felt incredibly one-dimensional, and I didn't resonate with any of them. I did not care about an outcome of a single one. The hints of romance that were sprinkled out throughout the novel was, in my opinion, pointless and not needed. It felt forced, and they had no chemistry whatsoever. The dialogue in general felt unnatural in a lot of parts and was clunky. it really was a struggle to read. And I'll just stop there. The pacing is very slow. And I found that with Addie LaRue as well. It's very plotting. Like, we're kind of meandering. There's not a lot going on. And I guess I think my original thought was that the start of the book, especially after she obtains the Book of Doors and realizes what it will do, that part moved very fast for me. So I agree that I thought the pacing was, this person said, all over the place. I will say I do think the pacing kind of goes in and out. So I agree with that. The characters, I can see not everyone enjoying Cassie, and I think that's one of the main complaints that I've heard from people from the Book of Doors, is that people just don't care about what happens to her. I think that her struggle with grief throughout the storyline really solidified my want and need to continue on her journey with her, but I can see why it's not everyone's cup of tea. Okay, let's see which one's next. I approached the Book of Doors with high expectations, enticed by its promise to capture the wonders of novels like The Midnight Library, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, The Night Circus. Unfortunately, my experience fell far short of anticipation. The writing style felt more like a narration that talked at me instead of immersing me in a captivating story. It felt as if I was reading a list of events. This lack of narrative finesse made the reading experience feel tedious, and I struggled to connect with the world the author sought to create. Another significant drawback was the absence of likable characters. So this is the thing I've heard from a lot of people. While none were inherently bad, the lack of depth and relatability made it challenging to invest in their stories. The somewhat confusing pacing and POV added to my dissatisfaction. On several occasions, I found myself struggling to continue because reading this book felt more like a chore than a joy. The absence of the anticipated magic and charm left me disheartened, particularly given my genuine excitement based on the book's advertising comparisons. I understand that, and I've seen it more, and I don't know if it's just because I'm paying more attention now, I have seen more often than not now that books do try and compare themselves to like the really big names. So The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I know, was super popular when it came out. So I've heard a lot of books compared to that. A Short Walk Through a Wide World, which was one of my worst books of the year. It was a DNF for me. I was super disappointed with that because it did not live up to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And as far as a comparison goes, do I think that the Book of Doors is on the same level? Absolutely not. But you also have to consider that the Book of Doors is a debut. And so I do think that the writing style, the kind of beautiful, almost lyrical writing of Addie LaRue doesn't happen in the Book of Doors. But I think the vibe, I don't know how you write vibes. I'm not an author. I do think the vibes match, but I understand that it makes sense. Like, if your expectations were super high and this book just didn't hit for you, I get being disappointed. Okay, on to the finale, guys. This worries me. I think this one's gonna hurt. Okay, Wind and Truth. Let's see how this goes. 1-star reviews. How many do we have? 290. That's not bad for like how many people have read this book. That's quite impressive, actually. I was expecting more. Although this book did just come out in December, so there might not be like a ton of people who have read it yet. So let us see. The first one, I waited 7 years to read this book. 7 years. And I am not going to finish it. Oh no. Sanderson has betrayed me. I came to this novel for fantasy. I came for Kaladin fighting. I came for Dalinar uniting. I came for Shallan lying. In this book, there are moments, but they are few and far between, outweighed by what feels like a Disney-style gay romance. I came for fantasy, not politics. Whatever your political leaning, this is not what Stormlight was all about. I will be honest, I cried. This hurt so bad. All of the things that you mentioned that you wanted were in there. But there was a lot of character development in this book. That was one of the things that I think a lot of, and we'll see if this continues to be a trend in the rest of the 1 stars. One of the biggest complaints I've heard about Wind and Truth is that, one, it didn't go in the direction that someone wanted. So like, however, whatever Brandon Sanderson decided to do in book 5 went you know, a different way than they wanted it to. But I've heard a lot of people say that it's really a book that doesn't have a ton of plot, that it's more about the characters moving forward with whatever path they were on. And I do agree with that. I just love it. Like, I love to see the characters growing in the ways that we saw in this book. So, but I do understand that complaint. But the fact that you didn't finish it is sad. I understand though. It's like 1,300 pages. So if you're not getting it, yeah, just don't, don't continue. One of the ones I found was, well, this was horrible, but at least I'm finally free. Go and read another book, friends. Here's another one, DNF at 22%. This was a mess. I didn't want a Marvel movie. I missed book 1 and 2 of Sanderson. Interesting. So this person's saying, if you're comparing it to a Marvel movie, I would say that it's more action-packed. So it's funny. We got 2 one-star reviews that essentially say opposite things. Oh no, this next one. The first sentence is, this is boring. Aw. No, in all seriousness, absolutely brain dump for a review. But this was honestly the most bloated book I've ever read. So many POVs with most unnecessary. I think that Adeline's plot was the only one that I was interested in because it was the only one that felt new. Instead, every other character's content consisted of rehash the same life lessons that they've spent the last 4 books learning. Self-reflection doesn't count as plot and makes for very boring reading. I disagree. I love self-reflection. I love it when characters can really dive deep into their thoughts and their vulnerabilities and things like, I love that stuff. I eat that up. But if you don't like it, yeah, you're probably not going to like Wind and Truth. Interesting. I wanted to like this. I was once a huge fan of Sanderson, but the formula for this is too old now. I did like the end state, to be fair. I thought it was an interesting way to end an arc, and I would be intrigued where the story goes as a whole. Oh, fun. That's interesting that you would continue after 1 star. However, we could have gotten there in 1,000 pages less than this. Ooh. The rating comes from the fact that I had pretty much no fun reading this. I was carried through by momentum and self-control, as I can attest by anyone who has spoken to me in the last week that I've been moaning about how bored I've been, but refusing to give up. I'm genuinely happy for the people who are still loving this, but I'm Sander done. Okay, rant over. Okay, so they're not going to continue. I mean, I appreciate the review though. Like, you know, your opinion's valid if you're not enjoying the self-reflection, the character development, if you're bored of all of the POVs. So it's interesting that you mentioned having too many POVs, because I didn't feel like we had any more POVs than the rest of the storyline. I do feel like we had a lot more details that we had to remember from those characters because of how big the plot has gotten. But Sanderson, in my mind, has always been someone who throws as many characters as he can at you, which I love, but I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Okay, let's do one more. This says, the only good thing about self-help books is that they're usually quite short. So someone, once again, not enjoying the self-reflection part of this story. This one is really long, and the psychological insights are presented in the most blatant and tacky way possible. On a serious note though, where did Kaladin go? And which second-grade actor who really got into music therapy in some weekend seminar replaced him? Oh, that makes me sad. Really suffered through this book most of the way. Adeline had some good moments with Maya, but his daddy issues eventually got in the way. But hey, at least Shallan made some real progress, right? Right? Journey Before Destination was a real struggle with this one. Oh, friend, I'm sorry you didn't enjoy it. So, there we go. I'll have to do another one of these where maybe I can read 5-star reviews so I can make myself happy again. Once again, this is all for good fun. I totally understand that we all have different opinions and different perspectives that we're going into books, different things that we're looking for in books and expectations. So not everyone's gonna love everything that we read, and that's the joy of reading. So At the end of the day, I hope that all of you guys who had these 1-star reviews got to read a lovely book that you enjoyed after it. So that is my hope for everyone here. So that is the end of my reactions to your guys' 1-star reviews of my favorite books. I hope you enjoyed this kind of weird rambling video with me. I had fun reading through the comments, but they were definitely painful at times. Let me know in the comments down below if you have a favorite book that everyone else loves to hate on. I would love to know if you guys have experienced that as well. If you are not feeling chatty, let's leave like a frowny face emoji in the comments so I know that you guys are here with me. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!